Are the New York Mets really interested in Alex Bregman? And if they are, does that mean Pete Alonso has played his last game with the New York Mets? We're going to talk about it all on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Down the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Over the weekend, there's been a lot of discourse about the New York Mets and their interest in Alex Bregman. All of this stems from a report by Ari Alexander of Houston's KPRC2, which I guess is an affiliate of NBC. Now, I looked into Ari Alexander. Is this credible? Is this some sham site? No, it is credible. He's a 7-time Emmy winner, apparently, and it does check out that he has some reporting on the Astros. So here's what the story said, and it opens with a quote from Dana Brown, the Astros GM, who said, quote, Alex Bregman's status is still the way it is. Nothing has changed since the last time we talked with you guys. We've been busy with a lot of different things, as I realize he's been busy trying to find a landing spot. Now, what have the Astros been busy with? Well, they just pulled off one of the biggest trades of the offseason, if not the biggest trade of the offseason so far, sending Kyle Tucker to the Cubs in exchange for, amongst other players. You had a pitcher in there, was a Hayden Wesneski, but the two big pieces was Isaac Paredes, who could be their starting third baseman next year if they want him to, or they can slide into first. And then they got Cam Smith, who immediately becomes the Astros' top prospect, who is a third baseman. So the Astros just figured out third base for the next decade. My guess is they probably aren't going to re-sign Bregman, but for now, they're saying, oh, our status hasn't changed. They offered him a 6-year deal, around $150 million. I think it was $152 million. Bregman apparently wants $200 million. So they're $50 million apart. They then go acquire multiple third basemen. I think that marriage is coming to an end. Now, here's what the story continues to say, and this is where the Mets get thrown in. Houston is still in play to bring back their star third baseman. Two league sources tell KPRC2, which again is the site that Ari Alexander writes for. They're still battling at least 3 large payroll clubs and a Detroit Tigers team that beat Houston in the 2024 wildcard round. The Astros, New York Yankees, New York Mets, and Boston Red Sox are said to show continued interest in Bregman, a league source says. Those 4 teams have been characterized by one source as the, quote, the strong 4, with the Detroit Tigers still interested, according to another source. First things first, when you get a report like this, who does it benefit? Now, I think some have wondered, is this something coming out from the Mets side of things to put pressure on Pete Alonso? To me, no chance. The New York Mets have been very tight-lipped under David Stearns. We don't really know what they're doing. They move in the shadows, and then they make their move. Obviously, Juan Soto was its own thing, but we never heard a report really until the very end about how much money might have been on the table. And it certainly didn't seem like that was coming from the Mets side of things. So their interest in Bregman, I don't think there's any incentive for the Mets to be putting this out there. Now, this could be a potential tactic to drive up the price on the Yankees or the Red Sox. Hey, the Mets are in it too. They just spent a ton of money. Who knows what Steve Cohen's going to do? Or this could all be about the Astros side of things. There's a quote from Dana Brown in the article. This is an Astros reporter. They're still in it. Are they? We've done some things, but nothing has changed. Hasn't it? To me, this just feels like a story that comes out that is the beginning of the breakup. It's the beginning of the public breakup for fans that love Alex Bregman. Because you're saying, look, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Mets, these 3 teams, the 3 finalists for Juan Soto who spent crazy money, they're in for Bregman. Already you're like, man, all right, it's only big market teams, and then us and the Tigers. Now, I still think the Tigers have a chance to win this bidding, They were my prediction when I did my predictions article. I haven't gotten a lot of those right, but I see the fit where maybe the Tigers are the team that gives Bregman like 7 or 8 years where no other team does, and they can win this thing. And Alex Bregman can go play with AJ Hinch and be a culture setter in Detroit after a Cinderella season for them where they made the playoffs. I still see that as a fit, but it also feels like it's the Yankees Red Sox battling it out for Bregman. And yeah, the Mets might be hanging around. And I'm not going to say the Mets aren't interested. I'm sure they're checking in on Corbin Burns' market right now too. I don't think they're going to sign him, but aren't you going to just at least keep the phone lines open to see what the price might be, to see if it gets to a point where you're ready to jump in? I think that's all this is as far as the Mets' interest in Alex Bregman. So I don't want to throw just nothing but cold water on this, because I think there could come to a point if Pete Alonso has a good enough market, right? And this drags out to the point where the Mets end up at a crossroads where they have to decide between one of these two players, and the cost ends up close. All of a sudden we have a real discussion, and that's the one that we're going to have on the show today. If the numbers are close, which one do you pick? My stance on Alex Bregman from the beginning was that I thought Alex Bregman was going to make more money than Pete Alonso, potentially significantly more money, because I thought he'd have a healthier market. So if that's the case, Alonso is going to make more sense because he's your guy and it might be a more affordable cost. But let's just say throughout the rest of the show that these guys are going to sign similar deals. Which player makes the New York Mets a better team in 2025? Alex Bregman or Pete Alonso? That's what we're going to talk about next. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And remember, you want to make sure you win that first $5 bet. So find something you're really confident in, because you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is also brought to you by Select Quote. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while Select Quote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. And these policies are more affordable than you think. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Again, go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our next goal is to get to 12,000 subscribers. Appreciate all of you who continue to hit that red button and subscribe. Let's talk a little bit about Alex Bregman. He was drafted back in 2015 by the Astros, second overall. Dansby Swanson went number 1. He became an all-star in 2018, debuted a couple years before that in 2016. In 2018, his first all-star season, he hit .286 with a .394 on base, .532 slug, 31 home runs, and an MLB best 51 doubles, was 5th in the MVP voting. The following year, in 2019, he hit 41 home runs, drove in 112, won his lone silver slugger of his career, and finished second to Mike Trout in the MVP voting. Now, with those early career numbers, you have to mention, of course, the caveat of the Astros sign stealing scandal. But what I will tell you is in 2019, his career year, his numbers were better on the road than they were at home. For his entire career, his numbers have been about even. The OPS, he's been an 850 OPS guy pretty much both home and on the road. I think at home it was 850, or excuse me, on the road it was 850, at home it was 846. So as much as you have that cloud that hangs over Astros, I think you can sort of throw that a little bit for Alex Bregman. With that said, he has declined, okay? 2018 and 2019, he was a 30 to 40 home run guy. Those were the two all-star seasons. Since then, he's been more of a 25 home run guy. Now, I did look into the poll numbers, right? Is he a guy that benefits from the Crawford boxes in left field? And my hypothesis was yes, he absolutely is. Those home runs are a little bit cheaper in left field in Houston. But honestly, you look into it, most of those home runs would go out in Citi Field too. So realistically, I don't think the ballpark or the allegations or what was proven with the sign stealing, any of that really weigh into this free agent decision for the Mets. What we're going to focus on is this past season and then the last 3 years. Look at the sample sizes to see who's been a better hitter, Bregman or Alonso. So this past year, Alex Bregman hit 260. He got on base at a 315 clip. He slugged at a 453 clip, 26 homers, 75 RBIs. Pete obviously got him in those two categories, 34 homers, 88 RBIs. He was 20 points worse in batting average. Pete hit 240, but he got on base at a higher clip, 329 compared to 315. Slugged at a slightly higher clip, 459 to the 453 of Bregman. So overall, Alonso had about a 20-point edge when it came to OPS. Over the last 3 years, Pete Alonso has hit 243, Bregman's hit 260, Alonso 333 on base, Bregman 349, Alonso 493 slug, Bregman 449. The OPS difference is about 30 points, Alonso at 826, Bregman at 798, because Pete's a significantly better power hitter. 50 points is a bigger edge compared to the on-base difference where Bregman has just been slightly better. And this past year, Alonso was better. The biggest concern for me with Alex Bregman is his walk rate. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But looking at their careers over the last 3 years, Pete Alonso, 120 homers, Bregman 74. Alonso, 337 runs driven in, Bregman 266. Alonso's played 15 more games, 476. That's in the regular season, of course. Bregman, 461. You look at weighted runs created plus, an all-encompassing offensive statistic that measures hitters on a league average of 100. Over the last 3 seasons, 2022 through 2024, these guys have played to about a dead heat. Alonso, 128. Bregman, 127. Let's dive into the numbers a little bit deeper, though, as how these guys really make up their offensive game. Alex Bregman does not strike out. Over the last 3 years, his strikeout rate is 12.4%. Pete Alonso's is 22.1%. This past season, Alex Bregman chased 23.6% of the time. Pete Alonso, it felt like a lot more, but 25.9% of the time. So a slightly higher chase rate. Whiff rate, big difference. Alex Bregman's whiff rate was 12.8%. That was in the 98th percentile. His strikeout rate was in the 94th percentile. Alonso whiffed about double as much, 24.7% of the time. Strikeout rate was identical, 24.7% of the time. Both were near the middle to the bottom half of the league compared to Bregman, where it comes to the whiff rate and the strikeout rate, he's right atop the league. Now, if you look at walk rate, here's the thing that jumped out, like I mentioned. Pete Alonso's walk rates have remained remarkably consistent throughout his career. He's always hovering right around 10%. Bregman, who has a career walk rate of 12%, this past year, his walk rate was 6.9%. That is alarming to me because that's the same walk rate of his rookie season. So to see that big of a dip in plate discipline, you wonder, is that just a one-year thing? Because it's crazy. He's not striking out at an alarming rate, but he was just putting the ball in play and getting out. He just was not walking as much. So all of a sudden, if you take a guy who you can count on being a 350 on base percentage guy, if all of a sudden for the rest of his career, it's where it was this past year, and he's a 315 on base percentage guy, that's a drastically different offensive player. Pete Alonso, he can run an on base percentage of 315 as long as he's slugging over 500 like he did in 2023, where he still hit the 46 home runs. That's the way he can offset it. Alex Bregman's not going to offset the on base with the slug that much. He's got to get on base. So that's something that does jump out to me. Bregman, he makes so much contact that his hard hit rates are not going to be as high as Pete Alonso's just in general, because Pete Alonso, he's swinging and missing sometimes. That's not going to factor into his hard hit rate. Bregman getting to a ball but not hitting it hard, that is going to weigh in on it, right? So a strikeout for Alonso compared to Bregman rolling one over, both of them are outs. But in hard hit rate, it's hard to compare the two. At exit velocity, average exit velocity, even that, you don't see a big drastic difference. But max exit velocity, Bregman at 109, Pete Alonso 116. It's obvious. Pete Alonso is the bigger, stronger guy. He's the more powerful hitter. Here's another interesting element to me. Alex Bregman's a year older. He's also, if you add in the postseason, he's played over, nearly 450 more games than Pete Alonso, 448 more games to be exact. So I do wonder, over a 6-year deal, which bat do we really believe is going to age better? I get that Pete Alonso's OPS has dropped the last couple of years. In 2022, he was outstanding. The last 2 seasons, it hasn't quite been there. But when it comes to hitting the ball hard, Pete's still doing his thing. When it comes to walking, Pete is still doing his thing. Now, the chase rate, some of these other things, there might have been a little bit of a dip, but I think just the attributes that Pete brings to the table, what he's good at, I don't think that has really dropped. I think if Pete Alonso is put into more advantageous positions and hitting behind Juan Soto is going to help, right? Because if Pete Alonso is hitting behind Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, first of all, let's say he hits a double lead off the game. Now Juan Soto, if he's batting second, who is giving him more protection in that on-deck circle? Is it Pete Alonso standing there? Or is it Alex Bregman? Because if I'm a pitcher and I'm looking at Juan Soto, I don't want to walk him and put Pete up with 2 runners on. I'm feeling a little bit better about putting Alex Bregman up to the plate than Pete Alonso in that situation. So that's one thing to factor in, is the protection for Juan Soto. I do think Pete Alonso has the clear edge there. I also think when you look at Alex Bregman, who needs to get on base, part of his game is predicated on that plate discipline and the fact that he doesn't strike out. And he's still not striking out. But I look at Alex Bregman, and I'm seeing a lot of comparisons in my mind here to Nolan Arenado, who we've seen the power dip as he ages. And with it, the production dips. Yeah, he's still not striking out, but he's not the same impactful offensive player. I don't think Pete Alonso's power is going to disappear in the next 6 years. I really don't. Alex Bregman, I have much greater concerns about that. With all of that said, I've spent this entire conversation comparing these two guys without mentioning the thing that Alex Bregman does that's significantly better than Pete Alonso. The reason why, if you look at WAR, he has been a much more valuable player throughout their careers. That's the fact that Alex Bregman plays a good third base, which is far more valuable than a poor defensive first baseman. So does that tip the scales enough into Bregman's favor? That's where we're going to close the show. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And Game Time Picks is a feature that helps you get tickets for your favorite live events even easier, because Game Time Picks is going to filter out the fluff and only show you the incredible deals on great seats. So don't waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. They're going to make it easier for you, and you can view your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And when you download the Game Time app today and create an account, you can use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets Insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You might even get inside access to the upcoming day's show. I was texting some of the insiders today about Bregman and Alonso, sort of setting the stage for what I was going to talk about today. So if you want to be inside Locked On Mets, make sure you become a Locked On Mets Insider. You can find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's talk about the defensive side of things. There's no question Alex Bregman is a significantly better fielder than Pete Alonso. Over the last 3 years, if you just look at WAR, which is all-encompassing, base running, fielding, as well as hitting, Alex Bregman has been worth 14 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. Pete Alonso has been worth 8.7 wins above replacement, despite being the better hitter, the more impactful hitter. Bregman just took home his first career Gold Glove award, came at a great time for him and Scott Boras. He's worth 6 outs above average, 6 defensive runs saved this past year. Pete Alonso was -3 defensive runs saved, -8 outs above average, and Mark Vientos at third base was -6 outs above average, -6 defensive runs saved. So you go from +6 outs above average, +6 defensive runs saved with Bregman over at third to Vientos, the inverse, -6, -6, and he played less games. So if Vientos had a fuller sample size, those numbers would have probably been even worse. If you put this into a computer, the computer is going to tell you the New York Mets are better with Alex Bregman than Pete Alonso. Because as long as Vientos can be at least at a Pete Alonso level defensively at first base, which is not a high bar, and he could be even better, you are going to have a better defensive team. And overall, across 162 games, that should make you a better ball club. That does not take into account, though, what a player means to the franchise and the protection in the lineup and what it means for the offense. It's also not going to account for Vientos maybe improving at third base, as well as how much these defensive metrics are sometimes unfair at the first base position in particular. Because I watch Pete Alonso play first base, and I've seen every game. I don't see a defensive liability at first. Yes, when it comes to turning double play, not good. That's like the one hole in his game that is clear, but he's not booting scoops all over the place. Like Pete Alonso is good around the bag. And that's the most important trait that I care about at first base. I just don't want Pete Alonso taking away from the defense of Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil or Luis Angel Acuna or even Mark Vientos. And Alonso to me is a good target at first. Now the question is how much the Mets believe in Vientos defensively. And if they spend more on Bregman than Alonso gets, that will tell you it'll be more indicative of how they feel about Vientos than it really would be about Alonso. It would be them signaling, yeah, we really just aren't that confident. But everything they've said so far is that they are confident in Mark Vientos at third base. And I really think they are betting on Vientos to be able to hold down that position, at least for now, knowing that they're going to keep DH open. And I think they're still holding on to a little bit of Brett Beatty stock. I think they're looking at Acuna. They're looking at Jet Williams. And they're thinking that they have enough depth in their infield that there is a world that Vientos could slide to DH at some point, or he might just continue to prove people wrong and be a good enough fielder. I think the Mets most likely are not as concerned about the defensive side of Pete Alonso at first and Mark Vientos at third in 2025 than the computer models would be and maybe the outside perception is. That's my take on it. And their actions will say if I'm right or wrong. If they sign Alex Bregman, I'm wrong. They are not confident with Vientos sticking at third base. And they're going to look at this opportunity to slide him to first and to get a comparable player to Pete Alonso, but one that's going to improve their defense. A guy that's not going to give them quite as much offensively, but he's a different hitter. He's a hitter that's not going to strike out, going to put the ball in play. Maybe they like that behind Juan Soto, or maybe they don't even expect him to hit behind Juan Soto. Maybe they expect Alex Bregman to hit fifth, but give you Gold Glove defense at third. So ultimately, it really comes down to a matter of preference. Knowing this franchise, though, after covering this team for 6 years and covering them throughout the entirety of the Steve Cohen era on this podcast, I just think that this owner wants to bring Pete back. Going into next year, what do Mets fans want more? And I'll put a poll out today. We'll test the audience, see what you guys think, and let me know in the comments your stance on this. Do you like Bregman? Do you like Alonso? If you're watching on YouTube, do that as well. I am curious if fans really are more in on Bregman. But to me, I look at the equity Pete Alonso has built in New York, the significance of keeping him in a Mets uniform. Obviously, the home run record is right there for him. It's within spitting distance. It's a season away, really. I mean, he can get there easily next year. I look at the possibility of having number 20 retired. I look at how many Mets fans show up to Mets games with that number 20 on their back, because he has sold more jerseys since 2019 than any player, I would assume. I haven't looked up the jersey stats, but I'd be shocked if it was anything different. Lindor, maybe since 2021, is close, but I still think Pete has been more of a fan favorite until this past season, until 2024, where Lindor played at an MVP level. But all of that stuff matters, particularly to Steve Cohen. And I think going into next year, running back the team that went to the NLCS for the most part, but plugging in Juan Soto, that lineup to me is more dangerous and it's scarier for an opposing pitcher. I think if Juan Soto wants protection, he'd prefer Pete Alonso to Alex Bregman. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am here. Because even with the perceived decline in the last couple of years, and I really do think that the contract weighed on Pete, the uncertainty, a guy that clearly loves New York, wants to be a Met. I think you now get him in this situation, potentially hitting behind Juan Soto. I think the numbers could spike. I think Pete Alonso can drive in 140 runs. Alex Bregman's never going to do that. Never. Now, Bregman might give you the better defense. Vientos might be the guy to drive in all those runs, and maybe it doesn't matter. But I think Pete Alonso gives you a much better chance at a top 5 offense in baseball than Alex Bregman does. Now, Bregman gives you a better chance defensively. Maybe overall, the difference makes Bregman the better player. And like I said, the computer model will tell you that. But I also think you have to remember every single side of this thing. And Alex Bregman to sign with the Mets, I mean, who knows? Maybe they're more attractive with Juan Soto, or if he had to pick between Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, maybe he does pick the Mets. I don't know if that's the case. If you have to outpay the market to get Bregman, when Pete Alonso might take a slight discount to come back to the Mets, like which one really makes more sense? Alex Bregman might have a better chance of getting that 7th year. He's a year older. So now you're paying for 2 years more as far as the 2 more concerning late 30s seasons from Bregman compared to Pete Alonso. I'm not as concerned about Pete's age 31, or excuse me, age 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Next 5 years of that contract, are we really that concerned that Pete Alonso is going to fall off a cliff at 34? Some might be. I'm really not. And then, 35, age 35, Pete Alonso, who could be the DH at that point. Who knows? Who knows how it all works out? I think the Mets are just waiting out the market right now. I firmly believe that they will get the opportunity to match the final offer on Pete Alonso. They're not going to get that with Alex Bregman. And they might be listening, or they might be keeping their toes in the Alex Bregman market just to see where it's at. And if the Yankees and the Red Sox fall out of it, they find other options, and all of a sudden it becomes more advantageous to get Bregman. The prices get closer between Bregman, and maybe there's somebody who goes all in on Pete and drives up the Pete Alonso price. If it gets close, if it's the same year, same dollar amount, it's a tough decision. And David Stearns might just pick Alex Bregman. But I honestly think that it's going to be maybe an additional year difference. And I think it's going to be potentially a pretty decent amount of money, just because I think you could maybe sign Pete Alonso to a deferred money contract like I talked about to get the average annual value down. There's a lot of things the Mets can do here with Pete that I just don't see them doing with Bregman. And then the fan side of it, and also the questions about Bregman going from Houston, where he spent his entire career, and now playing in New York under the pressure of a big contract. I just see more downside with Alex Bregman over the downside of Pete Alonso, which to me the downside is, maybe the OPS keeps dropping, but he still hits home runs, and he still has the capability, just like we saw with Giancarlo Stanton, to have a big October. That's the thing about guys that hit the baseball really hard. They can get hot at the right time and carry you. And I think the days of Alex Bregman carrying a lineup are gone. So for my money, I'm still all in on Pete. But it is interesting that Bregman is potentially in the mix for the Mets. And we just have to see what happens over the next couple weeks here to see which one of these guys falls first and to what team. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.